Craig Shirley is on the phone. He is a historian who has spent a lot of time looking at, studying, and writing about the Reagan years, among others. Craig, your thoughts today?
Well, obviously very sad, Brian. It's the passing of an era. Nancy Reagan was not only First Lady, I think she was a great lady. She understood the role of First Lady. She understood the role of the President. She didn't try to conflagrate the two. She didn't attend cabinet meetings. She didn't try to set policy. She didn't have her own, her own cabinet, so to speak. She understood that for a healthy nation must have a healthy president, and so she did the very important things of, making sure that Ronnie was in good spirits, that he was eating, that he was dressed, but she also said too, look, she wrote in her book, one of her books, that I sleep next to the President of the United States, so of course I'm going to let him know what I think of things, and she did. But to his credit and to her credit, they never really talked about, her advice to him. She did get involved in personnel occasionally, like for instance, she had a hand in forcing the ouster of Reagan's campaign manager in 1980, and then later the ouster of Don Regan as Reagan's chief of staff in 1987. But she's, she understood, that his legacy was important, so she devoted herself. And of course, her greatest role of all was caretaker in his later years. It was almost like an O. Henry novel, in that she was giving a part of herself in order to save him.
Of course, the more we change as a nation, the more we remain the same. As you remind me of how many times she was criticized for perceived meddling in policy and government affairs. Here we are in this modern day and age. Our current First Lady, Michelle Obama, criticized by a ton of people for, quote, meddling with school lunches and kind of advising America we need to improve our diet.
Right.
As
well,
I say, the more we change, the more we remain the same.
A 2-for-1 blue plate special that the people would get almost a co-presidency, not just Bill, but Hillary as well. She sold herself very much as a policy person and a political person to go along with Bill Clinton. So, yes, times have changed.
I wonder if, when was the next First Lady who had the influence on domestic and foreign policy that Nancy Reagan did? And I ask that only because she was thrust into the role of caregiver very early on in her husband's presidency, and that forged them really even closer.
Yes, it did. And don't forget, too, is that they walked into, and you remember, you were here at the time, I was here at the time, into what was basically behind enemy lines in Washington, D.C. The Washington political classes didn't like the Reagans. They didn't like the way they dressed. They didn't like their social skills. They didn't like their friends. And there was a lot of criticism from the style section of the Washington Post, some of it very personal, and from other media outlets, so that so in a way it drew them even closer in a way than they already had been. But, Brian, is that Stu Spencer once told me he was going on a political trip with, you remember Stu, Reagan's old political aide? He was going on a political trip with Reagan, and Nancy drove them to the L.A. train station, and the three of them got out, and they went into the lobby, and Nancy and Ronald Reagan embraced, and businessmen and businesswomen are coming and going, sky cabs are coming and going, newspaper boys are coming and going, and the two of them are there embracing tenderly, oblivious to the world around them. And in many ways, that was kind of the story of their life, is that they could be utterly, completely content with each other without the company of anybody else.
I'm still getting used to the image of Nancy Reagan driving them to the train station. Craig Shirley, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.